Shalom. This is Hadassah Basai returning with part 2 of this marvelous study called Psalm 83. And this study in particular, this part 2 is called, Is it a future war or was it a conspiracy? Now in part 1, we looked deeply and in detail at Yeshua chapter 66, starting from verse 1, because that same scripture, Yeshua, which is Isaiah chapter 66, verse 8, have been used to declare Israel was made a nation in one day. So once we start unraveling these deceptions, we will come to the conclusion and we will see the truth for what it really is. Because if we know that the people in the land called Israel are not the true people in the Bible, then who are they? Well, if you have not watched part 1, you will see with ample amount of proofs, ample amount of evidence who these people are. They even declare themselves. And it lines up with the scripture. I'm not talking about them calling themselves Israelites or Israelis or what have you. They call themselves Ashkenazi and Sephardic. Now, when you go to the scriptures, you're going to see who Ashkenazi or Ashkenaz, which will be the progenitor, who he really is and where he came from. And therefore, his descendants would have come from him. All right? We looked at that in part 1. So now what we're going to do, we're going to break open Psalm 83 because we know there are people out there claiming that there's this war coming against the Israelis and it's the Psalm 83 war. So let's see if it really is a war. All right. Now we will look at Psalm 83 to determine if it is a war to come or was it a conspiracy. In order to answer this question, we looked at another scripture that was taken totally out of context, which was Yeshua chapter 66, verse 8, to see the true people who will become a nation in one day. Now, that prophecy has not happened yet. The people that will become one nation, that will become a nation in one day, has not happened yet. All right. We have discovered that it was not Israel. And I call it Israel because I do not call it by our name, because our name is Yashraal, the true name of the land that belongs to the children of Yashraal, the 12 tribes. But the land that they declared that was made a nation in one day by the Zionists that are ruling this world, I call it Israel. All right? Okay, the current state in the Middle East, yes, I'm using that term as well, as this prophecy is set in the end times where the two kingdoms, the southern kingdom and the northern kingdoms, the southern and the northern kingdoms will be made one in their land upon Mount Sinai, in the hand of Hamashiach when he returns as Malach. So this scripture, Yeshua chapter 66 verse 8, is a future prophecy that has not been fulfilled yet, because it's speaking about two kingdoms, two nations, the northern kingdom, who's also called a nation, or the house of Yashraal, and the southern kingdom, when they become one again in the hand of Hamashiach, when he returns as king on the earth for his millennial reign, then this prophecy will be fulfilled. So now we're seeing the lies being piled up. like a heap of dung. All right? We've also discovered that the people currently living in Israel cannot be the people spoken of in the Bible because they do not meet any of the requirements to be called the people of Alahayam. No, they do not. Nothing about those people in the land, even the way how they look. All right? They're Europeans. They're from the cold country. That's why they're pale. The land in the Middle East, Israel and all the surrounding areas, yes, it is both hot and cold. So that's why the people from this region, they're olives. They're olive skin color. That's what they call it. Brown. And then you have the other side, which is the African nations, which are the African nations. That's the hot region. And that's why those people are dark. They're Hamites. All right? So we're not Africans, but we fled to Africa because they're the closest people they're the people that looks closest to us. We've always ran to Africa for cover. Remember when Yahusap and Mariam had baby Hamashiach? What happened? They did not flee to Africa. Actually, they fled to Matsarayam, which is Egypt. Egypt is a part of Africa. All right? Until it was time for them to leave there and come back home. We always take cover in the hot region because we're closest to the hot than to the cold. We can blend with the Africans more than we can blend with the Caucasians. That's why our people fled there in 70 AD. And now all of a sudden, Israel is made into a nation, and you got these white people. Yes, forgive me, but that's what they are. They call us black. They're white. All right? Let's not get hung up. These Caucasian, these people from the Caucasus Mountains, or Caucasus, is it Caucasus or Caucasus? Something like that. But they come from the mountains. They came down. And then they took over Europe. All right? And now they're in the land fighting tooth and nail to keep it. And you see all these governments pouring money in their lap. Oh, well, we're sympathizers. And you got the churches rallying around them. I rally only around my people, not them. All right? They're getting what they deserve. And Alahayam, if they don't clear out, he's going to destroy them out of that land. Read the Bible. When the two witnesses come, they're going to flee back to the European countries that they came from. Find that in Yeshua, I believe, in chapter 13 or chapter 3. One of those. I think it's chapter 13. I covered that in one of my studies. They're going to run. When the two witnesses come, after they're killed by the Beast Empire, number 8, Azazel, 3.5 days, they're going to lie in the streets. And at the dot of 3.5, not days, sorry, 3.5, not 3.5 years, 3.5 days, sorry. After 3.5 days, then Ruach HaKadosh is going to raise them up and bring them back up to heaven. And when that happens, then There's going to be a massive earthquake. And thousands of them are going to die, and the rest are going to flee back to the European countries that they came from. Right? They're going to flee away from the land. By that time, the land will be one land mass. So there's not really any more boundaries to declare what is Russia and what is China anymore, but they're just going to run from the land. All right, they're just going to run away and empty the land. Alahayam is going to clean it out to get it ready for the northern kingdom when they enter into the land. After they finish their second exodus. These people have assumed an identity that is not theirs. It was given to them, and they've been brainwashed for generations to believe that they are a people when they're not. All right? They of themselves will say, we're Ashkenazi. They're telling you who they are. And you think an Ashkenazi, by the way, is an Ashkenazi Jew is an oxymoron. It's like saying black, white, or in, out, or up, down. Because Ashkenaz is one, comes from Japheth, and Jew is actually abbreviated for Judah or Judea, which is Shamite. So which are you? Ashkenaz or from Yahweh? That's how they have the world brainwashed with this nonsense. They don't fit any of their requirements. The wars, the sieges, the enslavements. All right? Yes, they had one little event back with that funny little man with a little mustache under his nose. The cost hollow. Reverse the words. Oh, yes. And they love that. That is it's their medal of honor. Because anytime anyone says anything, then that comes up to the forefront. Oh, you remember these people were so persecuted. How about the Negroes that were taken from their land? In fact, it wasn't even their land, no. They were taken from Africa. But they've been living in Africa for a good few hundred years. Because they fled in 70 AD and became slaves in the 1600s. So they've been living in Africa for a long time. But they were taken out of the land that they were living in and made into slaves. They were put in shackles. Tell me if any of those people in Israel have ever been in shackles. Over and over again. And even after they claimed slavery was abolished, then they had all these Negro laws. You can't sit next to a white person. You can't sit in the front. You can't. All these anti-Negro laws, I should say. And then they brainwash the other nations to hate us. To hate dark-skinned people with curly hair. The world has been programmed to hate us. It's a plan. In fact, let me just, because I'm... okay, let me read on. But this world has been, people in this world have been indoctrinated through religion and through the educational system to hate us. And that's not a make-believe. It is real. They are the offspring of Japheth, which has completely ruled them out from onset. From the beginning, they have not made the requirements to be the people of the Bible. But there's more. They were never from the land that they call Israel. They were originally from the European nations. But wait, there is more. You see, if they were originally from the land and they fled to Europe and now they're returning, so be it. But they were never from this part of the land. You just got to look at the color of their skin and know this. Why do you think people in hot countries have dark skin? It's called melatonin. And it protects us from the sun. But if you're from a cold region, you don't need melatonin. All right? You don't need melatonin. And that's why they have those high nose bridges. Because when you have that high nose bridge, it means that you're from an upper region where there's less oxygen. So your body adapt to it by giving you a higher nose bridge than people that have a lower nose bridge, which will be the people from a lower part of the earth, the lands, the countries. All right? These people were never enslaved, besieged, or slaughtered like the people in the Bible. And please do not bring up the cost hollow. Reverse the words. Trying to not let the algorithm pick up on any little words that could trigger some sort of banning or whatnot. That event was nothing like the generations of slaughterings that the Negroes have been encountering and still are encountering. You turn on the news, you see that this person was gunned down or this Negro was beaten up, what have you. I'm not saying that the other races, they don't get beat down, but what are the reasons why our people are being gunned down and beaten down, even by the police? Why? I watched this video. Can't remember if it was a man or a woman, but it was one arm, Negro, driving a nice car. He got pulled over by police. And he's license and registration, please. He's like, why you pull me over? I wasn't speeding. Because he was a Negro driving a nice car. Man turned out to be a judge. Next guy, he was just hanging out with his friends and two policemen approached him for no reason. The guy was not doing anything. Put him in cuffs. And the guy said, you're making a big mistake. And they were getting all cocky with each other. And he said, reach into my jacket. Because he was wearing not a blazer. He was wearing like one of those winter jacket, a light winter jacket. He said, reach into my jacket and pull out my wallet and look inside my wallet and tell me what you see. Guy turned out to be FBI. See how quickly they took those cuffs off, and suddenly now they're calling him sir. I'm telling you, this stuff is real. All right? I'm not saying all the policemen are against us, but there's some of them that have that hatred towards us. As if we don't deserve to live and breathe and eat and walk in freedom. And then on the other hand, when you listen to some of the comments of how they express their dislike for Negroes. And all I keep saying is one day you will find out the truth. And when you do, the shock is going to kill you. And you're not going to a nice place either. Because you're hating on the people of Alahayam. I don't even let it get me angry. Right? But it is a reality of how this world has been brainwashed to think that because you have white skin, straight hair, and light color eyes, that you are above the people that have dark skin and woolly hair. They're the slaves and servants. You can be something better than them. Even if they were slaves, right? Even when they became servants, they were the indentured servants. They were the higher level servants compared to the Negroes. I remember they brought the thieves and what have you from the UK to be the indentured servants in the Caribbean. And now today you watch them and they think that they're something special, that they came from royalty. And they're the ones that got all the big businesses in the islands. And the Negroes still there slaving for them, even though they came over as thieves and robbers and murderers. They were in prisons. Prisons got so full of them that they send them away from the UK and wherever else. I know they think that that's where they descended from, and they think that they are better than us. I see it all the time. I went to school with them. I went to college with them. All they want to do is hang out with each other. Even the poor ones, they were very segregated. But that's all right, because it was less of them and more of us. So it didn't bother us. Anyways. And they married into each other. They would marry only their own kind and keep the money amongst themselves. And that's why we were always poor, and they were always the rich people. They became the rich folks. Anyways, that event was nothing like the generations of slaughterings that the Negroes have been encountering and still are encountering. So there it is. The Jewish people living in our land are not the people of the Bible. We discovered that in part 1. They're not us. They're not the people that have been written about from Genesis to Revelation. That is not them. Not one of them. The true owners of that land are the Negroes who fled from their land due to the Romans invading our land, Yashraal, in 70 AD. They came to destroy. Yet it all happened because of our forefathers' disobedience and rebellion against Alahayam. We brought this upon ourselves. But they were not supposed to slaughter us. They were not supposed to torment us. Alahayam used them to drive us into slavery and away from our land. That was our punishment. And that was punishment enough, but they took it 10 steps further and 10 steps deeper, lower, by treating us like dogs, humiliating us. They were warned, and yet they did not listen. Speaking of the 12 tribes of Yashraal. And so Alahayam brought desolation upon them and the land that is known as Yashraal. And he also scattered them far away from their land. And that's where we are today. We are people that have no land. We used to not have an identity until it was revealed to us. All right? Let's look at Leviticus chapter 26, verse 32. And I will bring the land into desolation, and your enemies which dwell therein shall be astonished at it. This is Alahayam, what he's saying. And I will scatter you among the heathen, and will draw out a sword after you. And your land shall be desolate, and your cities waste. Then shall the land enjoy her Shabbathawath, that means Sabbaths, plural, as long as it lies desolate, and you be in your enemy's land. Even then shall the land rest and enjoy her Shabbathawath. As long as it lies desolate, it shall rest, because it did not rest in your Shabbathawath when you dwelt upon it. And this was one of the reasons why he scattered us. All right. So every 7 years should have been a year of rest for the land, and they disobeyed that. They also were involved in pagan worship, and they were also marrying to other nations. All these things our people did against Alahayam. So it wasn't just about the land, it was about their worship as well. Transgressing his commandments, his laws, his statutes, and his judgments. Yashraal was warned time and time again to return to Alahayam, but they did not listen. Instead, they rebelled against him and turned to pagan gods to worship, amongst the many other evil things that they did. The final straw was their exile in 70 AD, when the Romans killed and enslaved many of our brethren of the southern kingdom, but many also fled to Africa. And it was from there they were led into slavery in the transatlantic slave trade. Since that time, our land remained desolate and empty until it was filled with a people it did not know, foreigners who have many people in the world today fooled into thinking that they are the true descendants of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov. And yet when you look at the drawings of the Israel of Yashraal, they call them the Israelites, but there are actually Yashraal, the 12 tribes of Yashraal. When you look at the drawings in the pyramids in Matsarayam, which is Egypt, do you see any white people up in there on the walls? No. Even Matsarayam were dark. All right. How do you explain that? How do you explain that the drawings that have been on the walls for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years are about a dark-skinned people, brown-skinned people, compared to the people in the land called Israel, calling themselves by our name, calling themselves us. They're not calling themselves by our name, because our name is Yashua. But they're saying that they are the people of the book. So they've stolen our identity. And yet their image does not look anything like the images on the walls in the pyramids. Even the picture of Yahusap, who is Joseph. He was a Negro. And yet if you look at old Bibles, you'll find these in the old ancient Bibles, and even some stained glass windows that were done way back in the time. You'll see images of Negroes that were drawn to represent either a prophet or even an angel. They're all Negroes, and now the modern pictures have them all blonde and blue-eyed. Sounds more Aryan than anything else. All right. And that's why these ones, the churches today, are fooled into thinking that those people in the land are the true people. You know what sealed it also for the people in the church? All those images that were drawn of this Jesus that they call the Messiah. What color is he? He's white like them. And because we have been sold an image, then we can buy the lie that those people in the land are the true people in the Bible. I tried saying that to a friend of mine. She's from the islands. We come from the same island, same neighborhood, everything. Try to explain this to her, she can't get it. She can't get it because she thinks that those people are the true people. Well, mind you, she still worships Jesus, so what else do you expect? When you're under that delusion, you will believe anything that they feed you. Any narratives that they will have, you would believe. Because when you come out from under their hold, under deception, now you're awakened. We have a lot of brethren that claim they're awakened, but they're still calling on Jesus and Christ and God and Lord. How awakened are you that you're calling the pagan gods of your slave masters? Either you're awakened or you're not. You can't be half asleep and half awake. Either you're awake or you're not. So if you're still calling on pagan gods, you're still sleeping. You're just repeating what you hear other people are saying and fooling yourselves thinking that you're awakened. All right, let's move on. So they were established by the Zionists and given our history and our culture, which they've modified, by the way, because they don't dress like us. They dress in black and white. Who dresses in black and white? Huh? Who dresses in black and white? If you look at the ground floor of the Masons temple, what do you see there? Black and white. What do they wear? Black and white. You don't need to be a rocket science to put these pieces together. Our people were people that were colorful. All right? We didn't wear black and white. Anyways. So they took our culture while they worshiped their gods like Hayun, who is represented by a six-pointed star called the Star of Remphan. They also worship Moloch and many others. Judging by this six-pointed star that they worship, this plan of dislodging a people and replacing them with fakes had long been plotted and in the works. So we get this idea of the six-pointed star called the Star of Remphan from Acts chapter 7, verse 43, when Stephen called them out, the religious leaders of his day. Yea, you took up the tabernacles of Moloch and the star of your god Remphan, figures which you made to worship them, and I will carry you away beyond Babylon. This six-pointed star that they call the Star of David. I'm not calling this name by our name, our king. Well, he was once the king of Yahweh and then the king over Yashraal. The Star of Remphan is the six-pointed star that the Jewish people call the Star of David. David never had a star. So this again is pagan worship. Pagan worship of a god called Kayun, which the leaders in Stephen's days worship. If you go back to my study, it is part of the Revelation studies, and it's talking about the Roman Catholic Church and Christianity. I go into great detail about this Kayun, Moloch, the six-pointed star, and everything about it. And how Christianity is a pagan religion, along with all religions on this earth. In fact, religion was brought to the earth through the fallen. That's why we're divided on doctrines. The true worship of Alahayam is not a religion. It's a way of life. So either you're worshiping him and you're in relationship with him, or you are in religion when you're worshiping anyone else or anything else. Please note this star was worshipped by other nations throughout the ages and even today. We see this star worshipped by the Hindus. And we see what's the name of the name has just escaped me, but it is the image that is standing in front of the CERN laboratory. I did a study on that too. It's that same six-pointed star. All right, the six-pointed star are two triangles, one pointing upwards and one pointing downwards. One is masculine and one is feminine. And when you put it together, you form that six-pointed star. It is bringing masculine and feminine in one body. I did a study on this. So you got our brethren walking around with this six-pointed pagan star on their chests, or around their necks, or on their heads, on their waistbands, what have you, thinking that they're walking proudly as Hebrew Israelites. And by the way, Hebrew Israelites, that is a pagan religion as well. There's no such thing. Because we're neither Hebrews and we're not even Israelites. We are Yashraal. That is who we are. Okay. Let's see where I left off. And these same leaders conspired together to hatch a plan. Hamashiach's first time on the earth. And this plan, sorry, this sounds a little bit strange here. So let's read on, start from, please note that this star was worshipped by other nations throughout the ages and even today. And these same leaders conspired together to hatch a plan. So remember when Hamashiach was first time on the earth? What they wanted to do was to disprove even the same people that worshiped the six-pointed star in the time of Stephen and beyond him, because they wanted to deny Hamashiach as the son of Alahayam. Remember, they were in league with the Roman Empire because they were religious, but they were not believers. And even from back then, the plan was hatched to deny Hamashiach ever came to the earth. All he was a prophet. That's all he was. His body disappeared. No, that didn't happen. They stole the body. And they paid people to come up with all these excuses. So this plan that was hatched was even at that time and even before them. This goes all the way back, folks. The Satans have been hatching this plan to deny us a people. And when they saw their opportunity, when we were taken as slaves, they saw that as their perfect opportunity to make sure that we don't ever come back to our land by putting another people there and calling them by our name. Well, calling them by another name. Because if they had called them by our name, then it would prove to the world and to some people that got a brain in their brain box that maybe these Negroes have a story to tell. All right. So they hatched this plan and they tried to deny Hamashiach's first time on earth. That's why these ones up in the land there, they don't believe that he ever came. That's all part of it. And this plan was developed to include even his people. You were never from that land. They would say, no, you're from Africa. Look at the color of your skin. You could never be from Israel. Look at the people there. You look nothing like them. If the people in our land currently are not the true people, then it means that this idea of a Psalm 83 war is definitely and without a doubt false doctrine. False doctrine. Because if we're not in our land, if it's not us in the land, how could there be a war waged against us? All right. If you have been following along with my Revelation series, you will understand all these points. You will know that when the true people, the 12 tribes of Yashwa'al, are returned to their land, no one will ever oust them again. No one will ever get us out again. When we are returned to our land, we're there for good. Our punishments are over. Our trials, tribulations, everything is over. All that we've ever been through, all of that, over. No one can bring us out again. We will never be slaves again. Because Alahayam is bringing out only the righteous remnant this time. He's not bringing out a mixed multitude. And that's why the northern kingdom has to go through a second exodus. Because all along the way, Alahayam is going to sift them. They are not being sifted right now. It's the southern kingdom that's being sifted. All right. The righteous remnant of the northern kingdom will be the first ones to inhabit our land at the end of the age by the seventh trumpet, soon to be joined by the southern kingdom. The two kingdoms will be made one kingdom in our land, Yashwa'al, in the hand of Hamashiach, when he returns with the southern kingdom. Now tell me, has this happened yet? Everything that has been written about the end times concerning the land and the people does not make sense about the people that are currently living there. He said when he returns us to our land, that there will be peace. No one will make us afraid. We'll be dwelling in safety. And yet these ones, they're walking around with guns. They're not living in safety. There's more conflicts up in there than anything else. All right. This will be the beginning of his 1,000-year reign, where he will establish his tabernacle upon Mount Sinai. This is Hamashiach when he returns with the southern kingdom. All this is covered in the Revelation series, Revelation chapter 19 series. Don't worry, we're going to get to Psalm 83 just now. There is only one people that fit the description of a people that had been so lost, without identity, without a land to call their own and be called by the name of their land, living in slavery from one generation to another, and incapable of tracing their forefathers beyond 400 years. I listen to some people, they can trace their ancestry all the way back to that whatever, people from way back, first century or whatever, Attila the Hun, all these different things. But we cannot trace our lineage no further than the fourth generation. Once we were brought to the lands of our captivity, that's as far as we can trace our lineage. And not even with total accuracy as well, like names and whatnots. Because I remember my grandmother and my great-grandmother. But beyond that, I have not heard about her or grandfather, great-grandfather. It's almost like they're like a mist. You know they were there, but you can't really grasp who they were. There are no pictures. You got these ones here, they got pictures that were either painted or when they first came up with photography, they got these old black and white shots. But we don't have any collections of information of our history. All we have, what they say about us in the history books and what they have brainwashed us to believe in schools. You're from Africa. That's who you are. You're a slave. You know, you tell a person that they're a slave enough times, then they're going to start thinking like a slave. You got to be awakened by the Most High to break out of that slave mentality. And this is exactly what they don't want. They don't want us to break out of that slave mentality that they have put upon us from the first generation that was brought out of Africa. And they make sure of it too. All right. Don't worry. We're going to get to Psalm 83. If then Psalm 83 is not a war, what is it about? It is, in fact, a prophecy about a conspiracy. I told you I'm going to answer that question right off the bat. It is a conspiracy that had been carried out to deny a people, keeping them in slavery, deleting their heritage, their history, their identity, their worship, their language, their culture, and anything that could connect them to the land that was once ours. And again, this only occurred because our forefathers were rebellious against Alahayam. And I should have personalized that, but it's okay. It's, there's only one people that fit the description of a people that had been so lost, without identity, without a land to call their own, and be called by the name of their land, living in slavery from one generation to another, and incapable of tracing their forefathers beyond 400 years. When you look at the Negroes from the transatlantic slave trade, you will discover that they fit the bill perfectly, as they are now a very scattered people, soon to be regathered. Let us look at the slave masters who enslaved our forefathers. And forgive me, I might have jumped. A paragraph. So forgive me. The slave trade started with the Portuguese, then the British, France jumped in there, Holland, and the Dutch. Well, I think Holland is Dutch. But the other Dutch countries. These are all Europeans, the offspring of Japheth, who decided and were helped by the Africans and even our northern kingdom brethren to take our forefathers into slavery far away from their land in case they should try to return. And that's why when you go to the islands, the Caribbean islands, you have a mixture of English-speaking people, French-speaking people, because they were predominantly enslaved by either the British or the French. Then you have Puerto Rico, that was the Spanish, all right, and so on and so forth. All right. So they were taken into slavery. Our forefathers were taken to slavery far away from their land in case they should try to return. So that was the reason why we were taken far away from the African continent, because they wanted to make sure that our people would never return to our land. So we were taken to the Caribbean, we were taken to the Americas, basically, what they called back then the Americas. It was a very well executed plan which worked for many generations, because to their delight, many of us and our parents and grandparents grew up not knowing our true identity. I'm laying a solid foundation that when we begin to look at this Psalm 83, we will understand the conspiracy. Now let us begin to look at this psalm to see the truth and not the propaganda that was hatched for generations. Let's look at Mazamawar, which is from the book, the Psalm 83, verse 1. Ashayar, which means a song or psalm of Asaph, who is, people pronounce his name as Asaph. It's Asap. Keep not your silence, O Alahayam. Hold not your peace, and be not still, O Alahayam. Let us investigate to know who Asap was. Asap was the son of Barakiah, who was a doorkeeper of the ark. He was a singer under Malak Dawad, King David. And not just a singer, but a prophet as well, judging from the Psalms he wrote. Asaph was from the tribe of Lawai of the clan called the Gershonites. Their progenitor was Gershom, son of Lawai, the son of Yaokab. They were responsible for transporting the tabernacle and its various articles associated with its construction. When Asaph wrote this prophecy, it was quite distant from his time, yet it is accurate to this day, now that we have understanding. So now that we understand that it is was a conspiracy that was planned, and now that we can look back and see the conspiracy for what it is, now we know the truth about who we are and why this plan was so well executed. At the time when Asaph wrote this psalm and it was sang in their time of worship, this conspiracy had not yet occurred. Yet Asaph was given a prophecy from Alahayam, like he gave to all his prophets of old, to inform his people through them of coming tragedies and deliverances. So as he gives the tragedies, he also gives you the outcomes. And it's always a good outcome, especially for the ones that return to him and worship him. From onset, Asaph is speaking to Alahayam to not hold his peace. He wanted him to speak and to move on behalf of his people and the calamity set against them. And although this was a prayer spoken by Asaph a long time ago, it is also prophetic, making it timeless. Like all of his prophecies, like all of Alahayam's prophecies, they're timeless. Therefore, its fulfillment is set according to the will of Alahayam. When he wills it to be fulfilled, then it is fulfilled. Whenever this prayer is due to be answered, speaking of the destruction of our enemies by the move of Alahayam, it will be answered by Alahayam, for by Ruach HaKodesh. It will be answered by Alahayam, for by Ruach HaKodesh, Asaph spoke the words of Ha'aba into existence, ready any day now for its fulfillment. So Alahayam, he will answer this prayer in its due season, because it was Ruach HaKodesh that had given this prophecy to Asaph to speak it into existence, because it's like a time capsule waiting for it to be opened, waiting for it to be fulfilled. So it'll be fulfilled in the end times when Alahayam is going to destroy these conspirators. He gives us the seed to plant, then he waters and he brings forth at his appointed time. So when he gives us words to speak, we may not see the fruition of our prayers and even the prophecies that his prophets have spoken, because much of his prophecies are due to occur between now and the end of time. It's all about the end times. Prophecies that were fulfilled in the past sometimes have a double fulfillment event attached to it. It is for the time of the prophets and for future distant time. All right. Okay, let's look at verse 2. For lo, your enemies make a tumult, and they that hate you have lifted up the head. These are the enemies of Alahayam because they were being led by the Satans to do this evil deed against his people whom he loved. These wicked people who we will see who they are in a little while were a people with evil intentions given to them. They hate all and anything that had to do with Alahayam. Of course, Yashwa'al will be the focus of these enemies of Alahayam, specifically the southern kingdom. We were the last to be scattered. The northern kingdom, they were long gone. Even while we were living in our land, they were long, long gone. But we were the last to be scattered. And apparently they seem more afraid of us than anyone else. Maybe because Hamashiach came and he gave us his word. And he gave us Ruach HaKodesh. They have reason to be afraid of us. Because once we come into the knowledge of truth, that's it for them. It's over. Deceptions only work as long as the person is deceived. But deceptions cannot work on a person who knows the truth. And as long as we know the truth, we cannot be deceived. All right. Alahayam, let's see where I left off here. These wicked people. Yes, of course, Yashwa'al will be the focus of these enemies of Alahayam, specifically the southern kingdom. I read that already, I'm sorry. They raised up an uproar and an uprising that brought them together in one accord. So this tumult that they had was an uprising against Alahayam, a plan which brought them together in one accord to do this thing against his people. All right? This uprising was against Alahayam, and they rose up in great pride in their leadership, which he permitted. He allowed them to do it because we were rebellious. They came together, they met together, and they planned together all these evils that they did against the Negroes. Verse 3. They have taken crafty counsel against your people and consulted against your hidden ones. Can you imagine that Asaph, he saw this happening before it actually happened? And when I say saw, I'm not talking. He understood what was happening, what was going to happen, that is. All right? No wonder he told Alahayam to don't be silent. These people rose up in their pride, thinking that they had the power to carry out their plans, as there were many of them that were confederate together in this evil plan. They came together as leaders of many nations, and this was done throughout the ages, even unto today. Listen, if you think that this is far-fetched, go back and read the Bible, and also read the Apocryphal while you're at it. These nations try to come together. In fact, not try. They came together to try to war against Yashwa'al time and time again. We've seen it happen in nations coming together, the Midianites and the Amalekites coming together to war against Yashwa'al. We see the Philistines doing it as well. Sometimes they gang together because they think that with great numbers, they can come and overwhelm us with their numbers to defeat us. But what they don't have, what they don't bank on, is that Alahayam will break out against them and cause them to turn their own swords against each other, as long as we are obedient to him. And this has been happening throughout the ages. Go and read the Bible. Yashwa'al didn't have any alliances with anyone. If there was an alliance, they were tricked into it. But we always stood alone, even to this day. All these nations around us always wanted to destroy us. And now suddenly they come together and they're planning. They had planned. And when you talk about today, let's look at today. Whenever you have world leaders meeting together in secret, there should be cause for concern. They're not meeting together in secret to make life happy for the citizens of their countries over which they're ruling. Rather, they're conspiring together, coming into one accord to their plans and agendas and even narratives. Some might say that this is conspiracy theory. If not so, then the actions of these people would be made transparent for all to see their quote unquote good works. If they had good works, trust me, they will want the whole world to know. But they have secret agendas. And yes, they want to bring about world domination. But the Gentiles, they're just collateral damage. The true target are the righteous remnant of Alahayam, because they know once he regathers the southern kingdom and then the northern kingdom rises up, they are awakened and they begin their second exodus. They know, actually, even from before, when the southern kingdom, when they're taken up in the chariots, they know game is over. They know that their time now, literally, they're on a countdown. All right? Coming to a quick end for them. So what they're trying to do is to prevent the regathering of the southern kingdom. All these things that you see happening today is to prevent the southern kingdom from being regathered in the chariots. But what they're not banking on are the 3 days of darkness that is coming, that is going to paralyze this whole world, except the righteous remnant of the southern kingdom. Just like the earthquake, the great earthquake, seal number 6, is going to paralyze and destroy the technology of the NWO Beast Empire number 7, so that the northern kingdom can begin their exodus. Alahayam has it all planned out perfectly. So they're coming together with their little secret meetings all over the world. Rather, they are conspiring together, coming into one accord to their plans and agendas and even narratives. Yes, I read that. Some might say that this is, I read that too. We are talking about groups of world leaders and other powerful and well-known philanthropists slash business owners, which will remain nameless. You don't need me to call any names. These billionaires that are out there making decisions concerning our health. Come on. You gotta know there's something up. You got the same billionaire going into the African countries because they're trying now to find out where the northern kingdom is, to sterilize and fill them with diseases in vials. They're taking the vials and they're sticking it in their arms. All this they're doing because they're afraid of Yashraal coming together. They're afraid that of our awakening and our regathering. Some of these groups, and I'm going to be very cryptic here with my words. So you have groups like the Bilderbergs, put it together, the Trilat Commission, and that LAT stands for lateral. Then you have the World Forum Economic, all right, who's ran by that Anyway, I'm not going to call his name either. And they meet yearly for their secret meetings, sometimes more than yearly, held all around the world. They move their meetings in various locations because they don't want people to know where they're meeting, but somehow it gets out. But let me tell you something. These ones that we know of, fine. But what about the meetings that we don't know of? You think these are the only meetings that they have? These secret meetings have been going on for a long time now, which includes the Illuminati and Masons Free. Put that around. Change that around. All right? To name just a few. And these are just the ones that we hear about through the grapevine. What about the other groups and meetings that we do not see or hear about? All right? Judging by the state of the world today, the powerful control that is now over every country on the earth did not happen overnight. Look at what happened 4 years ago. In March, or rather, yes, March of 2020, when the whole world was readied out, couldn't get on an airplane to go anywhere. All the borders were closed. And that happened overnight. Where did this power come from? From these people meeting together in secret so that they are in sync with each other. The plans that are being laid out, that they're carried out with expertise and precision. We go to sleep thinking, oh yes, we have people in politics taking care of our needs, when in fact they've sold us to the wolves. The ultimate plan of these wicked organizations from the beginning was to keep a people ignorant of their true identity. Know this, that this evil plan was handed down from father to son throughout the ages to ensure the continual success of this plan. So if you think what happened in March of 2020 was something new, no, this plan has been handed down for generations, and they're just waiting for the right moment, the perfect time to bring about this plan. And in order to bring about this plan, they had to have technology in place. They could not have brought about this plan of closures all around the world 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. They had to do it here and now in this time because the technology is here. And this plan was passed on from father to son. So these people that meet together, they're old family relatives of each other. They're all connected to each other. Not because of the agenda, but because of their heritage. And that's why they only marry into their own kind. They will never marry someone from from general population. Right? They will never marry someone from the general population. They will only marry their own kind. They have their own circles, their inner circles of friends and family, and they stay within those circles. And that's why I have it written here. It is for this reason why these people do not marry outside of their circles. They stay within there because they keep the wealth in there, and they keep the agendas rolling, because they're the ones that know what is being planned and the plans that are being carried out. So to keep the plans going from generation to generation, they have to stay within their circles. Heaven forbid if they marry outside their circle and something gets leaked out. I mean, well, they know how to take care of that person anyway. They're very good at killing without making it look like a murder. All right, they have their ways. These leaders, how do you think they managed to get all the right people in all the right places and all the governments in this world today? How do you think they did that? Because the naysayers, they were either retired or killed off or humiliated out of office. And then they replaced them with their own people. Give them a nice, sweet story to make everyone feel kind of fuzzy about them. That this person, they came from poor and they studied hard in university and they made it. They give them a story, a heartfelt story, and people suck it up. Okay, let's read on. These leaders conspire together through their consultations with each other to do this thing against Alahayam and his people. So this thing has been going on for a long time. That's why Psalm 83 cannot be a war. It's a conspiracy. They thought and still think to destroy us as a people, but they always have a plan B. To corrupt if they cannot destroy. So they try to destroy us. Oh yes, through all those slaves. You know how many of our people died in slavery? Tens of millions. Compare that to the cost hollow. Reverse that. No comparison whatsoever. These wicked leaders planned in their secret councils the things that they would do against our people, and that including deleting our identity and replacing us with a counterfeit people called the Israelis. This is one of Earth's greatest hoax, pulled off with excellent expertise. Slavery was the best way to remove the Negro's identity, replacing it with another. And over the course of time, a generation was born who had no idea who they descended from. They changed our names and gave us our master's name, our slave master's name. They give us British name, even though we were supposed to be, imagine this, we were supposed to be from Africa, right? But yet we got British names. Does not sound kind of fishy to you? Even if we still had the African names. No, but we got British names. All the people in the Caribbean, we came up with British names. All of us. Even the parishes in the islands, I don't know about the other islands, but in the island that I came from, all British names. Not one of it was African. The only African connection we had was when we sang Kumbaya. And that wasn't African. No. And our forefathers were a little smart, so they had the little spiritual songs. And they put a little tidbit in there when they started singing about swing low, sweet chariots, coming forth to carry me home. That was passed on from generation to generation to this day. Now we can understand what they're singing about when you're talking about swing low, sweet chariots, coming forth to carry me home. All these spiritual songs that our forefathers had to kind of make it seem like they're singing gospel or singing, hymns or whatever. But it was all a secret message to the coming generation. I'm telling you. History books were even changed. And the Christian religions became the core of the deception, along with the educational system put in place. Yes, I was raised in the Caribbean, and we were raised under the Anglican church. We had the Anglican and we had the what's the other one? The Catholics, and we also had the other churches, like the Methodists and what have you, Nazarenes, the Church of Nazarenes. We had those as well. All right. But the school system now, um, in the school system, we were under the Anglican Church, the Anglican Church. I remember every Ash Wednesday, the priest used to come. Oh, yeah, I remember those days. So, all of this was part of the indoctrination to keep us thinking that we were slaves, that we came out of Africa, and all this different nonsense. Right? They really did a number. They had rewritten history, geography, everything, because it was a conspiracy to keep a people down. And they also used the other nations to keep us down. All right? Call racism, whatever you want to call it, to keep us down, to keep us oppressed as a people. All right. Again, this came to our forefathers because of their rebellion against Alahayam. He had warned them this was going to happen if they did not return to him. So let's look at Jeremiah chapter 5, verse 15. Lo, I will bring a nation upon you from far, O house of Yashraal, said Yahweh. It is a mighty nation. It is an ancient nation, a nation whose language you know not, neither understand what they say. Their quiver is an open sepulchre. They are all mighty men. That means that they kill you with their bows and their arrows. They're just gonna kill you. Right? And they shall eat up your harvest and your bread, which your sons and your daughters should eat. They should eat up your flocks and your herds. They shall eat up your wives and your fig trees. They shall impoverish your fenced cities, wherein you trusted with the sword. Nevertheless, in those days, said Yahweh, I will not make a full end with you. So let me pause here for a second, because our forefathers, when they fled to Africa, yes, the land, Yashraal, was taken over by the Romans in 70 AD. Yes, they ate up our food, they destroyed some of our people, and so on and so forth. But when we fled now to Africa, we fled there 70 AD. We did not become slaves. Our forefathers did not become slaves till the 1600s. So during that time, they decided to make a life for themselves in this land, a land whose language they did not know. All right? They made houses, they made their cities, because there wasn't a few people that fled. We were talking about millions of our people that fled to Africa. And over how many hundreds of years? More than 1,000 years, 1,400 years, 1,500 years. You know what happened? We multiply, and we are people that love. Listen, we are very prolific people when it comes to making children. So those few million will become tens and tens of millions. All right? Maybe even hundreds of millions. Because it's over 1,000 years of multiplying. And by that time, we would have had our own little cities there in Africa where we decided to settle. All right? Have our flocks and our herds and our vineyards. We decided, okay, this will be our land then. If we can't go back to our land in Israel, in Yashraal, then we're going to stay here and call this our land. Okay, let's read on. And it shall come to pass when you shall say, wherefore does Yahweh Alahayana, our Alahayam, all these things unto us? Then shall you answer them, like as you have forsaken me and served strange gods in your land, so shall you serve strangers in a land that is not yours. Declare this in the house of Yaakov and publish it in Yahweh, saying, hear now this, O foolish people, and without understanding. You have eyes and see not, and have ears and hear not. So we our people tried to establish a life in Africa. But guess what happened? The Africans that were living there, and even our Northern Kingdom brethren that were totally assimilated into the Africans there, hated us. And so we became a target. Um, we became a target, and we were sold into slavery. And they came and took away what belonged to us. When you go and take away a people, and we're not, and like I said, there are millions of our people that were taken in slavery. When you come and you do that, what do you think is going to happen to the things that are left behind? Obviously, the other nations that are living around is going to come and take away those things. They're going to take away all of our forefathers' things, our vineyards, our fields, our herds, flocks, what have you, our homes. Everything sitting there perfectly waiting with no one living in it. You can come in and establish yourself as a people in this land now, because the people that were here, they're gone. They were taken. Okay. What Yashraal, all 12 tribes, do not understand is that we have sworn enemies that are the evil spirits, and they had devised from the very beginning to try to destroy us using the other nations around us. That's how it's always been. Alahayam protected our forefathers when they were obedient to him, but he cannot protect us if we are rebellious. He gave us laws, statutes, judgments, and commandments to protect us from the darkness. But our greatest enemies turned out to be ourselves. When the Satans and his evil spirits could not destroy us, they decided on another strategy to corrupt from within. They knew that our rebellion will mean that the protection that we once enjoyed will be removed, leaving us easy targets for their agendas. And so, this plan of enslavement, then to delete our identity, was long time in planning. And it worked. But what they had used to prevent us from knowing our true identity, causing us to be hidden even from ourselves, also worked against them, causing us today to be hidden from them. This is the marvelous work of Alahayam. So they deleted our identity, and in the end, it is now working against them. That's why Alahayam permitted this. He permitted this because if they should know who we are, then they will come and just easily wipe us out. And especially, I mean, these people, these evil, wicked people, they don't really care about the Hebrew Israelite camps. Let me tell you something about these Hebrew Israelite camps. They're confederate with these people. I kid you not. Look at the way how they dress, look at their symbols that they wear, and listen to the nonsense that they preach. All right? But who they're interested in are the righteous remnant that are hidden. Why are we now the hidden ones of Alahayam? Because when this plan of our enemies came together, the northern kingdom was already assimilated in Africa for a very long time, which had caused them to become hidden. Oh yeah, they became hidden amongst the people, like a chameleon. The southern kingdom, who were the last to leave the land of Yashraal, had fled to Africa in hiding from the Romans. This was the perfect situation for these evil nations, who then thought to enslave us, as we were remarkably different from the other African nations at that time. So they didn't want to enslave us in our land or bring them to their land. They wanted other people to come and take us as slaves. So when the other people came, like the British and the French and what have you, came to take us as slaves, the Portuguese as well. They sat back and said, yeah, and point their fingers to us and say, these are the people that you need to take out of our land. And that's why today, when you go online, you can Google this, how these other African leaders came together and made a public apology to the people of the Caribbean, saying that we saw, our forefathers saw that you were in trouble and we did nothing to help you. Well, it's a little bit too late now for that. What's the use of an apology now? You need to repent. All right. Thank you for the apology, but it's already done. And you took everything that belonged to our forefathers. Anyways, let me just, I don't know, some people, no, let me just move on. Let's see. This was the perfect situation for these evil nations who then thought to enslave us, as we were remarkably different from the other African nations at that time. And so they planned and they conspired together. All these nations included, and especially the African nations as well. Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, because they want us out of the land, because they want what we had. The northern kingdom was already hidden by Alahayam amongst the African nations. And now what was left to be done was to make sure that the southern kingdom would not return to the land of Yashwa'al. So there was no real chance for the northern kingdom to even want to go back to their land, because they had no idea about the land at this point of time. They were gone since 721 BCE. And they were part of the conspiracy to get us out of the land too. I kid you not. It's written down in the scriptures that our own brethren betrayed us. All right. I think that's in part 1. They fled in 70 AD, but became slaves in the 16th century. That's the 1600s. I think that's what it is. Forgive me, Abraham. I'm not really into these centuries, but if our people, the southern kingdom, was so noticeable, even after some hundreds of years living in Africa, then it would have meant that they had continued somewhat to live like Yashwa'al, even while in Africa. They were unlike our northern kingdom brethren, who would have assimilated fully into the cultures of the African nations around them after hundreds and hundreds of years, which is a lot more longer than the southern kingdom. So the southern kingdom, they were the last to enter into Africa, and by that time, the northern kingdom was like the Africans. They were Gentiles, basically, and they still are Gentiles until they are awakened. This is not speculation on any part. Our people, the southern kingdom, would have to have been so different from the Africans in every aspect of their ways, culture, and dress that it made them an obvious target for slavery, as the Africans would have wanted them removed. And we see it today. Some Africans will look at our people from the Caribbean and say, you're not African, you know. You were never African. And our people will still swear, we are Africans. We want to go back to the motherland. And you go there and they treat our people poorly. They steal, they cheat, they lie. I know. I've heard of people that go to a certain African nation because people were thinking that this particular African nation is the promised land. So everyone packed up and fled there. And when they got there, so much stealing, so much lies. Lots of agendas rolled out. Telling people pay for this and you get that. And they will take the money and don't give the people what they promise. And then finally the government came down on them and said, we're going to kick you guys back out. After you pay all this money, you get kicked out of the country. Back to where you come from. We just wanted your money. And that's what a lot of the African nations are doing. They're making promises to people in the Caribbean and America and Canada and where have you, and tell them, come here. We have land for you. And people are like, yeah, 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 because we are African. We're Africans and we're going back to the motherland. And then when they get there, all right, let's see what's going to happen to you. They're trying to bring out our people to bring that. Listen, they're doing one of two things. Either draw you into Africa because they hear our people talking about Africa so much. They say, okay, well, let's hatch this plan. Let's get them into Africa. And once we get them there, then we're going to deal with them. And then we have the other foolish ones talking about ships, going into the second Exodus in ships and telling people to go down to the ports. So now that's another kind of deception that our people are jumping on board with. And again, the wicked people that rule in this world, they're just rubbing their hands with glee. Like, okay, yeah, get them all on the ships and then blow it up when they get into open water. Blow it all up. All right. You think they're going to take you anywhere? You think the Gentiles are going to come with ships, luxury liners, and take you on a cushy ride? Honestly, our people, they have, that's why the Most High said, all right, my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. When you believe these lies, that means that you have no knowledge. You're foolish. You're ignorant. And you're in darkness. Oh my goodness, wake up. Anyways, let's move on. I want to finish this study. Okay, so I started with speculation. This would have planted their vineyard. They would have planted their vineyards and orchards and built their cities and houses after all these hundreds of years, thinking that they could substitute this African hot land for Yashwa'al. This would have angered Alahayam. To think that his people, instead of repenting, then to return to their land, they continued on in this foreign land. And you know how our people are? We will borrow a little bit of worship from over there and bring it over here. Oh, they're killing chickens and dropping blood. Instead of killing the lamb, we will kill chickens instead. That's how our people are. Up to this day, we're still that way. All right. There would be some who would have tried to incorporate the pagan worship that they saw around them into the true worship of Alahayam. And that too would anger him greatly because this is polluting his name. So they stayed in Africa, multiplied tremendously into the tens of millions, kept their, maybe even hundreds of millions, kept their dress code, well, hundreds, maybe 100, up to 100 million. But it would be the high tens of millions because I read somewhere that it was up to 80 million that were killed. Between 20 million to 80 million. So they would have been, yes, in the hundreds of millions. But they were taken in slavery time after time. It wasn't a one-time thing. That's what I'm trying to say. Time after time, these people would come into this particular part of Africa and rallied up these people and took them in shackles onto these boats, onto these ships, and then taking them far away from their land. Not even with a shirt on their backs. Not even shirts on their backs. Okay, let's read on. So these multiplied tremendously into the tens of millions, well, hundreds of millions, kept their dress code somewhat, kept their culture somewhat, and their worship of Alahayam somewhat. The southern kingdom would not have wanted to assimilate themselves fully into the African nations, but they would have borrowed, quote unquote, from their cultures and their worship. This we see happening every day, even today. We see it happening even today in the Caribbean islands, where many of our people of the southern kingdom are located, who try to be African in every way. So let us remember why our people were always scattered in the first place. It would have been no different living in the land of Ham. What Alahayam did when our forefathers were taken as slaves, he caused them to become hidden by being assimilated in the culture and in the worship of their slave masters. And this was also our punishment. After all, it was what our forefathers always wanted, to worship like the heathens, to worship on their terms. And so Alahayam caused just that to happen, while at the same time hiding his people from future annihilation. We have multiplied greatly, and now we are spread far and wide. Now the wicked ones cannot discern who the remnant of the southern kingdom is, and even our northern kingdom brethren in Africa. But it goes a little further than this. It is easy to pick out the Hebrew Israelites, who they are, because they broadcast themselves so much. But what the Satans want are the chosen ones who are hidden. Even if they speak, they're hidden. The ones that Alahayam has instructed to speak out, he has them hidden. There are many of our brethren in camps who are speaking out about the transatlantic slave trade and such. But the issue is that the Satans are looking specifically for the remnant that will be regathered, not the rebels that love parading themselves, and not the mass majority who are everywhere. No, the Satans and their agents are looking for the hidden ones, who are the chosen ones, called the hidden chosen. So let's look now at Psalm 91, starting from verse 1. He that dwells in the secret place of Ha'olah shall abide under the shadow of Hashaddai. And that's where we are. That's where the righteous remnant of the southern kingdom are. And this is where the northern kingdom, the righteous remnant of the northern kingdom will be. Hiding under the shadow of Hashaddai, under his wings. I will say of Yahweh, he is my refuge and my fortress. My Alahai, Alahai, should be just Alahai, in him will I trust. So Alahai is my Alahayam, in him will I trust. So when he becomes our fortress and our refuge, that means that's where we are hiding. We're hiding in him. Surely he shall deliver me from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover me with his feathers, and under his wings shall you trust. This is what he wants for his people. That's why he has returned to us his true worship. Because when we worship him, he can now cover us with his wings. And there we have refuge. His truth shall be our shield and buckler. A buckler is a small shield for hand-to-hand combat, and a shield is a bigger shield, it's larger, that protects us from the javelins, the swords, and what have you. And he is both to us. That is protection. That is protection. So he becomes our buckler, and his truth is our shield, and his truth is our buckler. So when we have the truth in our heart, it's like wearing a shield and a buckler, because the enemy loves to send those fiery darts, doesn't he? And when we have the truth, those lies that come like fiery darts cannot find a place to land, because the shield and the buckler will quench all of the fiery darts. That's why we need to know the truth, because the truth sets us free. Verse 5, you shall not be afraid of the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flies by day, nor for the pestilence that walks in darkness, nor for the destruction that wastes at noon time. I believe that's noontime. Noonday. All right. 1,000 shall fall at your side and 10,000 at your right hand, but it shall not come near you. Only with your eyes shall you behold and see the reward of the wicked. So we're in hiding, but they're the ones that Alahayam is going to break out against, and we're going to see their destruction. Verse 9, because you have made Yahweh, who is my refuge, even Ha'olayawan, which is the highest, your habitation, meaning that's where we dwell. We dwell in him. There shall no evil befall you, neither shall any plague come near your dwelling. For he shall give his angels charge over you to keep you in all your ways. They shall bear you up in their hands, lest you dash your foot against a stone. And this is the reason why Alahayam wants us to worship him. Stop worshiping the pagan gods. The pagan gods cannot offer us any protection. In fact, they're the ones that are bringing us into destruction. Verse 13, you shall tread upon the lion and the adder. That's who Satan is. He's a serpent and he's a roaring lion. But when we have truth and we're abiding in Alahayam, and he is our refuge, we can step upon the lion and we can step upon the serpent. The young lion and the dragon shall you trample on their feet, and he's also a dragon. These are all names given to Satan. Names of creatures given to Satan. Verse 14, because he has set his love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he has known my name. That's why these ones out there calling on Yahuwah, Alua, and Yeshaya, and Ahaya, and all these different names, they can't hide under the wings, under the shadow of the Almighty of Hashaddai. Because they're calling on pagan gods. When you know his name, it's because he has revealed it to you. And when he reveals it to you, it means now that he's bringing you into covenant with him. So that you can worship him and he can offer you in exchange his protection and his provision. Verse 15, he shall call upon me and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. Salvation from what? From the wrath to come. Not only he's already shielding us from our enemies, so now we need to be shielded from his wrath. That's what salvation is all about. Psalm 91 was written with one people in mind, and that is the 12 tribes of Yashwa'al, the 12 tribes of Yashwa'al. As we meditate on this psalm, it is clear that Alahayam is speaking to his people about the calamities and persecutions that they have been and will be going through, yet he will see us through it all. We know that he was there with our rebellious forefathers in the wilderness and afterwards. How much more will he be with us today if we are faithful to him and worship only him, unlike our forefathers? Especially now when the time of the end is drawing closer and closer, and the world is becoming darker and darker. Darker and darker. He has us hidden under the shadow of his wings. Otherwise, the evil ones would destroy us. And still, they have other agendas in play to try to corrupt as many of our brethren through deceptions and also drawing them into allegiance with them. But the true hidden chosen of Alahayam will remain hidden until he regathers them. All right, let's look at verse 4. And this is still Psalm 83. They have said, come, let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Yashwa'al be no more in remembrance. Now, I really don't need to go into detail because I've already gone into detail about the plan, but let's do it anyway. Their plan was to annihilate us, but they couldn't. Alahayam, that's why they say, let's cut them off from being a nation. But they couldn't. Alahayam would not allow them to cut us off entirely, although many of our people died at the hands of these wicked nations. As they could not cut us off entirely as they had hoped, they instead hitched a plan to hide our identity. And not only hide our identity, but they changed our language and call it Hebrew, which it is not. They changed names in the Bible, names on the maps, all to bring about this very elaborate agenda. They also achieved through fake history, telling us that we were from Africa originally. By the first generation born in slavery, their plans began to work, and with each passing generation, we began to fade as a people, a nation, and became slaves and servants, even after they claimed that we were free. By this time, the general public were and still are being taught to hate us through indoctrination in their educational systems, and laws were passed to keep the Negroes subservient, to never sit with a white man or woman, never to eat in their establishments or travel in the same seat, but always at the back, or whatever carriage was designed for the Negroes. This is in the past. This all laid the foundation of racism, making those of the white complexion, Caucasians, with their straight hair and light eyes to seem superior to us, who had darker skin and curly hair. It was a well-laid plan that is still working today. Every generation, they release their Hollywood productions to remind us that we are slaves. An indoctrination that is to be passed on. And I guess that this idea works to keep us thinking like slaves. They give us a few heroes, like what do you call her, that Parker woman, and then the other one that they brought out here the other day, and Kunta Kinte, and all these different ones, right? That's all a plan, Hollywood production. And they give us a few heroes. I guess this is to make us feel proud that we are those slaves. When we start to affiliate with that person that is being beaten and put down, it's reinforcing that slave mentality. And our people are so ignorant that every time they bring out these Hollywood productions, they start jumping on the bandwagons and say, hey! I think it's Rosa Parks or whatever. And then there was this other woman that came out here the other day, this other movie that came out here the other day, and there was one there, that Winfrey woman, she played a part in it. I think, was it The Color Purple? Yeah, no, that was a long time ago, but there was another one that she came out with as well. And then you had the one called Roots. Remember that one? That was a big hit back in the day, back in the 80s. Every generation to bring out these movies to keep the narrative rolling. You are a slave. You came from these people. Look at them. They look like you. Be proud as a slave. Be happy because you had a hero who tried to break up but couldn't. Who tried to run away but couldn't. Chopped his foot off, all kinds of things. Just be proud that you came from slavery. Just be proud. Accept your identity. Oh my goodness, people. These wicked nations had hoped that this would go on forever. But what they did not know was that Alahayam had appointed a time for the awakening of the southern kingdom, which has already happened, and later for the northern kingdom. They cannot stop the awakening, as it was programmed in our spiritual D-N-A-, take away the dashes, like a time capsule. Time capsule is open. However, their plan of cutting us off for a while worked like a dream, for we, the fourth generation, did not know our true identity until now. We just knew that something was not adding up somehow. It is for this reason why Hamashiach sent his Ruach Kadash to help us in our awakening. That's why he released his spirit, his Ruach, to help us in our awakening, because he knew we were going to be far away from our land. We would not have known there was such a thing as a tabernacle and anything to do with the worship. All right, so we needed Ruach HaKadosh not only to awaken us to our true identity, but to also bring revelation. That's why Hamashiach said, not only are the things that I've taught you, he's going to reveal to you, but he's going to reveal other things to you too. What do you think he's talking about? He's talking about the awakening and the revelations that will come with the awakening, bringing us into truth. So he's here to help us in our awakening and to help us put the pieces of our lives and worship of Alahayam back together again. And that's why you got some foolish ones talking about, oh no, we can't know how to worship Alahayam while we are in captivity. We don't have a tabernacle, but yet Alahayam say, I will be as a little sanctuary to you in the lands of your captivity. What does that mean, people? It means that when he's ready to return us to worship, we better worship him. Hamashiach said, the Father seeks such that would worship him in spirit and in truth. What do you think that means? You think we need a tabernacle to worship Alahayam? That will come later on. Any excuse to get away from worshiping Alahayam, again, that is deception. Okay, let's move on. Psalm 83, verse 5 to 8. They have consulted together with one consent. They are confederate against you. The tabernacles of Edom and the Ishmaelites of Moab and Hagarenes, Gebal and Ammon and Amalek, the Philistines with the inhabitants of Tyre. Assur also is joined with them. They have holpen the children of Lawat. That's Lot. Salah. Let us look now at who the nations were, who are confederate with each other against Alahayam and his people. So these are who the nations were at that time, and we will see who they are today. Let us also remember that the names of these nations will not be found on a world map today, but we must understand that from the time of these nations' existence, these plans were in place to cut us off as a nation. Although these nations have since evolved, their descendants are still carrying on the plans through the evil spirits who are leading them. This is the driving force of these nations, the evil spirits. And that's why Alahayam does not want us to marry into these nations, because they are led by evil spirits. They're led to worship the evil spirits. And Alahayam said, if you marry into them, they're going to draw you away from me. And on top of that, these are the ones that are trying to destroy you, and you want to go and marry into them. I mean, our people really don't think. Why would you want to marry your slave master? Or anyone that looked like your slave master? Yes, they were not our slave master, because technically we're not in slavery, but we're still under the same system, carried out by the same people who started it in the beginning. And you go and you marry into these other nations that hate us, thinking that they love me and I love them, because you hate yourself. We've been people that have been hated, and they've taught us to hate ourselves, hate our hair, hate our skin color, hate our features. And so we try to do things to make ourselves look like them, look like the slave master. Talking about identity crisis. We want to look like the slave master. We want to have straight hair. We're going to bleach it and make it blonde. We go and get the contact lenses and have green and blue eyes. We go and take pills and put creams on our skin to make it lighter. We go and get the operations done to change the shape of our noses, to make it pointy like theirs. All these things that we do to make ourselves look like them because we've been taught to hate ourselves. And we think that if we can change how we look, then maybe the world will love us. And then some people go one step further and they're going to marry into the other nation so that their children will come out looking like them and not looking like the other nations, but not like them, the Negro. And they will encourage their children to keep marrying into other nations, not understanding that you've lost your inheritance and you've brought the wrath of Alahayam upon your heads. You don't understand what you're playing with. If you truly understood what you have, the inheritance that is waiting for us, then you would not sell yourself short by running after these heathens. But the problem is our people do not understand what they have, what the inheritance is. Just like Osha, who's Esau, he didn't understand who he is. He didn't understand what the inheritance is all about. He could care less about it. He wanted a bowl of beans, and that's all he wanted. He was hungry. His flesh was calling out for food. You can't eat an inheritance, but you can eat a bowl of beans. And this is how our people today think. Inheritance? What does an inheritance do for me now? I want to make it in this world. I want to make it in this life. And I want my children to make it too. So if I have to go and marry another person, marry a person from another nation, so be it. I'm trying to create success for my offspring. And all you're doing is bringing destruction upon your heads and upon their heads. Unbelievable. Let's read on. So let us look now at who the nations were, who were confederate. I think I read all of that. Sorry. Although these nations, I'll read on from there. Although these nations have since evolved, their descendants are still carrying on the plan through the evil spirits who are leading them. One other thing that we must remember, we have to take these nations back to their true origins. So when we look at these nations, Moab, Edom, Ishmaelites, we have to go back to their origins. All right? Their progenitors, for it will be their progenitors that have hatched this plan through the evil spirits that was passed along from generation to generation until we have arrived at today. So we looked at something like this in the Revelation series. I believe it is chapter 20 when we looked at Edom, and we even looked at it in this previous study called in part 1 of Psalm 83. But let's look again at this. The tabernacles of Edom, or the Edomites, descended from who? Osha, who is Esau, and who was the twin brother of our forefather Yaakov. So technically, Osha was a Shamite. He came from the same parents as Yaakov, our forefather. Edom was a wicked man who married wives from nations that he was told not to. His lineage since then continued to marry other nations, and for this, Edomites are spread far and wide and are no longer Shamites. How can you be a Shamite when you have diluted your lineage? All right? They are the Europeans, the Asians, and Africans today, which can be traced back to Japheth and Ham, the two sons of Noah. You're going to keep seeing these two names popping up. And those are the progenitors of even the Edomites. Because Oshan and his children never married back into their lineage. As a matter of fact, we didn't want them in our lineage anyway. So the Most High, he steered them away from us and led them into other nations. Let's look at the Ishmaelites. That's another one. Descended from Ishmael, the son of who? Abraham, our forefather, and Hagar, his Egyptian concubine, the servant of Sarah, Abraham's servant. So we know that Ishmael returned to his mother's roots, which would be Egypt, Matzorayim. So he married back into Egyptians, married back into his Egyptian lineage from his mother's side, and married her people. The Ishmaelites were quite nomadic, and so they too spread it far and wide to be who we call the Arabs and even Matzorayim. They too can be traced back to Asians and Africans, leading us to Japheth and Ham. Moab was the son of Lawat by his daughter, and Lawat was the nephew of Abraham. Abraham's brother was Lawat's son. Abraham's brother was Lawat's father. So they were relatives. All right. They too became the sworn enemies of Yasha'al, although Lawat was Abraham's nephew. The people of Jordan today are the Moabites, who are Asians, and they descended from Japheth. All right. So we have the Hagarenes, also called the Hagarites, and as their name indicates, they descended from Hagar. Hagar is the Egyptian concubine of Abraham. Why they call themselves after her name, I have no idea. Abraham's concubine, who is Ishmael's mother. They were also nomadic like the Ishmaelites and of an Arabic clan. Therefore, their roots are both Asian and African, making them the offspring of Japheth and Ham. So all these are like clans of the Ishmaelites or Edomites or what have you. But when you look at the root of them all, Japheth and Ham. Gebal or Gebal were the Phoenicians, who were sea merchants who descended from the Canaanites. Those are Africans. They too spread it far and wide to be mixed with the Europeans as they were conquered by the Greeks. They then have their roots in Japheth and Ham. Ammon was the brother of Moab from the other daughter of Lawat. Remember when Lot, who is Lawat, left Sodom and Gomorrah, and he took his two daughters and his wife looked back and became a pillar of salt? Well, they hitched a plan that they needed male children to help look after them because it was just their father. And that's why they slept with their father to produce offspring from him. It's called incest. So they produced Ammon and Moab. And they were both enemies of Yasha'al. So Ammon came from the other daughter of Lawat. Therefore, they were the progenitors of the Jordanians again, who are Asians, the descendants of Japheth. That's who they are today. You call them the Jordanians. Amalek, another race of people descended from Osha by his son Eliphaz, were sworn enemies of Yasha'al. Amalek, like many of these other nations, do not exist today with the name Amalek, but they have transformed themselves as they were amalgamated into many nations. Nevertheless, they can be traced back to the Canaanites, who were the descendants of Ham. The same can be said about the Philistines, who are the Palestinians today. They're Arabs, yet their descent can be traced back to Canaan. Therefore, the Philistines are of Asians because of the Arab aspect of they are, but they're also traced to the Canaanites. So they're Asians and Africans, which leads us to Japheth and Ham again. Tyre were also Phoenicians. That's why you hear Tyre and Sidon. They're Phoenicians. And like the Phoenicians, they descended from the Canaanites and mixed with Europeans. So this makes them of Japheth and Ham. Assur are the Assyrians descended from Sham, believe it or not, the son of Noah. Yet they are not part of our genealogy, making them not Shamites but Gentiles. And why? Just like Edom, the Assyrians, Assur, married away from the lineage. They married into other nations. So they're not counted in the lineage of Shem. Although the name is there, they're not. That's why they became our enemies. They became the Assyrians, who are part. The people today will be the Turkish people, the Syrians, Iraqis, Iranians. Those people, they're not our people, right? Look at them and look at us. They're not our people. But their root, their progenitor, was Sham. But yet they're not Shamites. They became part now of these other nations. And I know I said you have to look at their progenitors, and that is for the greater majority of them. But nevertheless, even though you look at the progenitor, and you look at the people today, because we know who the Assyrians are today, and you can see that there's a big gulf between the two, between the Shamites and between them. And when we look at Shamites, we're looking at the particular lineage that Alahayam has chosen to be his people. These Assyrians were not chosen to be his people, although he's going to bring back a couple of them back into the fold. I read that somewhere in the Bible. All right? There's some that he's going to bring back, them and Egyptians. All right? So they descended from Sham, the son of Noach, yet they are not part of our genealogy, making them not Shamites but Gentiles. They are the Iraqis, Iranians, Turkish people, and even Syrians. They are also referred to as the Chaldeans. That's where Abraham came from. Arameans and Syriacs. This makes them of Arab descent, who are the Asians, the offspring of Japheth. So even though they started off as the offspring of Shem, they were led away, far away from the lineage, because they did not come and marry back into the lineage of Shem to keep their name in the lineage. They married away from that, and that was the doing of Alahayam. This is what he does to keep his lineage pure. Although Assur was the son of Shem, he did not remain within his Shemitic lineage, but married outside of his lineage, producing this people. All right. At the end of it all, we are to see that all these nations that plotted against Yashraal were descendants of Ham and Japheth, whether Europeans, Asians, and Africans. They all decided together to try to dislodge our people and claimed another race of people to be their own, to be us. Other race of people that are their own people to be us. That's what I meant to say. Even if they were of the offspring of Shem or Abraham, these people proved themselves to be our enemies throughout our generations. Just look at the Assyrians, how they treated. They're the ones that took the northern kingdom away in captivity. All right. So these people proved themselves. Let me read that again. Even if they were of the offspring of Shem or Abraham, these people proved themselves to be our enemies through our generations, and now even up to this day, based on the true history of Yashraal. It was a brilliant plot that worked for a few generations, but they had not banked on Alahayam awakening us. They had not banked on Hamashiach, the son of Alahayam, coming the first time on the earth to pave a way for his people to return to Alahayam. It's called redemption. The redemption plan. They did not bank on the love of Alahayam for his people, even though they were punished by him for their disobedience. And they had not banked on time, their time running out, and their inevitable destruction, even spoken of in the prophecies. They thought that they can conquer the prophecies and they can conquer the people. But they had no idea that Alahayam had a time capsule in place, that when a certain time came, that this will unfurl. The awakening would unfurl and his people would blossom and become his true worshippers. Let's look at Malachi chapter 1. Malachi, sorry, chapter 1, verse 1. The burden of the word of Yahweh to Yashrael by Malachi. I have loved you, said Yahweh. Yet you say, wherein have you loved us? Was not Oshah Yaakob's brother? Said Yahweh. Yet I loved Yaakov, and I hated Oshah, and laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness. So Oshah, who is Edom, is represented, is the you call it the poster child for the Europeans, the Asians, and the Africans. All right. Let's look at 4 Ozariah. This is Ezra chapter 6, verse 7. Then answered I and said, what shall be the parting asunder of the times? What will the end times look like, Alahayam? And when shall the end of the first and the beginning of it that follows? When will the time end and the new time and the new beginning will begin? What will it look like when it's ending, and what will it be like when it's beginning? And he said unto me, from Abraham unto Yitzchak, when Yaakov and Oshah, who is Esau, were born of him, Yaakov's hand held first the heel of Oshah. Verse 9. For Oshah is the end of the world, and Yaakov is the beginning of it that follows. Let me read that again. Oshah is the end of the world, and Yaakov is the beginning of it that follows. Oshah, when you look at the people that are running this world, they all come down to two sons of Noach, Japheth and Ham. All right? You have the ones up in there in the Caribbean and in the African nations. Those are the Hams. Don't worry that some of them might look like us. Might have a token one too in America and what have you. But they're all plants there. And Oshah, like I said, he's the poster boy for the Europeans, Asians, and Africans who are running this world today. And when I say running this world, they are in league together and being governed by the 1% of the elite who are of Satan's lineage. They call them the serpentine lineage. All right? But Alahayam is saying that their rule is going to come to an end. And when their rule comes to an end, then who is representative of Yaakov? But the 12 tribes of Yashrael. And who governs over the 12 tribes of Yashrael? None other than Hamashiach, our king, and of course, Yahweh, our heavenly Abba. So there's coming a time when the evil, wicked rulers on this earth is going to come to an end. And there's coming a time when true rulership is going to be established on this earth. And this is the end times. And this is why these people are working feverishly. You see them passing laws behind the doors, behind our backs, even while we're sleeping. Because they're scrambling. They're scrambling to keep it together. To keep this plan of theirs intact. Because Alahayam is bursting their plans at the seams. Because his people have awakened. The southern kingdom, they have awakened. And they know now that they're not from Africa. They were never from Africa. They lived in Africa, but they're not from there originally. They are the true people of the Bible. And now they know that they're going to be regathered. So the lies that they had us under, the deception, even when we were in the churches, we were still under deception. Now we've come out from the churches. We don't believe in their narratives. So what hold do they have on us? None whatsoever. So now they're coming, they're trying to make more plans now to see how many people that they can try to derail off this path. That's why I'm saying, don't listen to anything that these people have to say. All right. We see that Oshah, who is Edom, ruled in this world through the Europeans, the Asians, and the African nations. So the European, Asian, and African nations. Edom encapsulates all three races of people that were and still are confederate against Alahayam and his people. So they're the ones who have created this conspiracy from the very beginning because of the evil entities, the evil spirits that have had put it in their hearts to do this thing. But Alahayam have given them a period of time to rule in this world. But soon their time will be over and they will be destroyed by him. It will be then that the seed of Yaakov, who are the 12 tribes of Yashraal, will rule in this world with Hamashiach, even over the angels, and over the remnant of the righteous Gentiles that will remain after the judgments are completed at the end of the age. And I covered all of this in Revelation chapter 20 series. There are about 7-8 parts to it. Very interesting. Okay, let's look at Psalm 83 again, verse 9 to 11. Do unto them as unto the Midianites, as to Sisera, as to Jabin, at the brook of Kizon, which perished at Endor. They became as dung for the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeb. Yeah, all their princes as Zeba and as Zalmunna. So now Asaph is asking, praying to Alahayam to destroy these confederates in the same way how these particular ones were destroyed by him. So let's look at their destruction. The prophet Asaph prayed that Alahayam would destroy these heathens that had let me read again. Let me start from the beginning. The prophet Asaph prayed that Alahayam would destroy these heathens that had conspired against him and his people, in the same manner as he had brought about the destruction for the enemies of our forefathers in the past. So all these destructions that you see here, verse 9 to 11, are things that have happened in the past. Let us look at how these wicked people were destroyed. They are not listed in the same order as in the Psalm. So I don't have it listed in the same order, but it's okay. The Midianites were descended from Midian, the son of Keturah, and Abraham, our forefather. You see, the Midianites were our sworn enemies, and yet they were the offspring of Abraham and Keturah after Sarah died. He had sons by her. Midianites became our forefathers' worst enemies, and Alahayam used Gadaowan, who is Gideon, to be the judge over Yashraal, who followed his strategy to fight against the Midianites and Amalekites, who he, meaning Alahayam, had them destroyed themselves. So let's look at Judges chapter 7, verse 22. And the 300 blew the trumpets, and Yahweh set every man's sword against his fellow, even throughout all the host. And the host fled to Bethshetta in Zerarath, and to the border of Abel Meholah, unto Tabath. All right, that was a mouthful there. So these 300 were the people that were chosen by Gadaowan to have their trumpets and their lanterns in this vessel that they broke. And they blew the trumpets after they broke the vessel. And that caused mayhem amongst the Midianites and Amalekites. They turned their swords upon each other and killed themselves. Let's look down now further in Judges chapter 7, still Judges 7, verse 25. And they took two princes of the Midianites, Oreb and Zeb, and they slew Oreb upon the rock Oreb. So he had a rock named after himself. He was killed on his own rock. And Zeb they slew at the winepress of Zeb. So, oh my goodness. And pursued Midian and brought the heads of Oreb and Zeb to Gadaowan on the other side of Yarden, which is Jordan. So these two people, these two princes, Oreb and Zeb, they got their heads chopped off. So Ahsap wants these people to turn the swords upon themselves, to chop their heads off. And trust me, in the end times, in the last two, especially in the last two wars, they're going, which would be the war of Armageddon and the war of Gog and Magog. These people are going to turn their swords against each other. So this prayer is going to come through. This prophecy is going to be fulfilled. Let's look at Judges chapter 8, verse 21. Then Zebah, and Zalmunna said, Rise you and fall upon us, for as the man is, so is his strength. And Gadaowan arose and slew Zebah and Zalmunna and took away the ornaments that were on their camels' necks. So again, these ones were killed by Gadaowan, who's Gideon. They were slain. So Zebah and Zalmunna were kings of Midian, who were pursued by Gadaowan until he caught them and killed them. Their armies too were discomfited by Gadaowan and his army, Yashraal. Alahayam also used another judge by the name of Debawara, who is Deborah, a prophetess, to prophesy the defeat of Sisera, the captain of Jabin's army of the Canaanites. So here we are looking at how the Midianites and their kings were destroyed and their princes, and now we're looking at the Canaanites. All right. Judges chapter 4, verse 9. And she said, I will surely go with you, notwithstanding the journey that you take shall not be for your honor, for Yahweh shall sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. And Dabawara arose and went with Barak to Kadesh. That should be went. Then Yael, who's Jael, Heber's wife, and this is jumping down now to verse 21, because Sisera ran away from the war, and he sought refuge with Yael, who is Heber's wife. And because they were friendly, meaning they were not enemies, she took him in, she fed him milk, he asked for water, she gave him milk, and he fell asleep because he was tired. And you know what milk does to you, especially when you're tired. Puts you to sleep. And that's when we're going to pick up from here. So then Yael, this is verse 21, because we jumped down from verse 9 to verse 21. Then Yael, Heber's wife, took a nail of the tent and took a hammer in her hand and went softly unto him and smote the nail into his temples and fastened it into the ground, for he was fast asleep and weary. And so he died. Can you imagine? That's such a that is a way. That is, oh my goodness. All right. Let's drop down now to verse 23 of the same chapter 4 of Judges. So Alahayam subdued on that day Jabin, the king of Canaan, before Habanai ol Yashraal, the children of Yashraal. And the hand of Habanai ol Yashraal prospered and prevailed against Jabin, the king of Canaan, until they had destroyed Jabin, the king of Canaan. So you see how Alahayam caused his people, and he also assisted. He was the one who was at the helm of these strategies to destroy our enemies. And he's going to do it again. We don't have anything to fear, folks. Nothing at all to fear. We just need to hang tight and keep worshiping Alahayam, and he'll take care of all the rest. These kings of Midian and Canaan greatly oppressed Hamanai old Yashraal until they cried out to Alahayam for help. And this is the thing, that these were the people who oppressed us greatly. And when we cry out to Alahayam, he hears and he responds. Don't worry, we are crying out today, right? But he has a time allotted for our deliverance. And all the things that we're going through is there to prove us. All the things that we are going through are there to prove us. All right? It's not to destroy us, but to prove us. And that's why we have to hang tight and keep pressing in. It was then that he raised up judges to lead his people to victory over their enemies. But this time around, he is going to be the judge. So here we are again. Asaph is calling for Alahayam then on our behalf today. So he's speaking to Alahayam then on our behalf today, because he saw the future of our forefathers and our future today, how oppressed we will be. He saw the plot that they would contrive against Alahayam and his people. And so he prayed and prophesied for our enemies' demise. And it's coming, guys. It's coming. Let's look at verse 12 of Psalm 83. Who said, let us take to ourselves the houses of Alahayam in possession. I have these words underlined for a reason. The houses of Alahayam are not in reference to his tabernacle. He only has one tabernacle. Yes, there were two tabernacles. The first one was destroyed, and then they built the second one. The second one was destroyed, and the one in our land, they want to build a third one. That's not what they're talking about here. For houses here are plural, while Alahayam's tabernacle is singular. Besides, our enemies would always destroy our tabernacle, taking only the articles Alahayam wanted them to have. They're not interested in taking in possession our tabernacle. Even if houses here represented tabernacles, then our tabernacle would still be standing, right? But they destroyed it. In fact, Alahayam allowed them to destroy it, but he partially destroyed it first. Read in the Apocrypha, I can't remember which book, if it's Ozara'ah or Baruch, one of those two books. Therefore, houses are in reference to something else. The house of Yashraal and the house of Yahawada. Together, they are the houses of Alahayam. They're taking the houses of Alahayam in possession. Is speaking of ownership as in slavery. And we know that both houses, also called nations or kingdoms, were enslaved by these people, the offspring of Japheth and Ham. The northern kingdom by the Assyrians, then the southern kingdom by the Babylonians, the Medes and Persians, the Europeans, and many others. Europeans speaking of the Greeks, the Romans, and what have you. Oh, let's not forget about the British and the Portuguese and what have you. We were taken in slavery by all of them. All right? So they took us in possession, the houses of Alahayam. Jeremiah chapter 3, verse 18. In those days, the house of Yahawada shall walk with the house of Yashraal. That's the southern kingdom, shall walk with the house of Yashraal, which is the northern kingdom. And they shall come together out of the land of the north to the land that I have given for an inheritance unto your fathers. Let's look again at Jeremiah chapter 5, verse 11. For the house of Yashraal and the house of Yahweh have dealt very treacherously against me, said Yahweh. Now, I'm not using these two scriptures for anything but to show you that there is a house of Yahweh which represents the southern kingdom, and the house of Yashraal which represents the northern kingdom. So when they speak of the houses of Alahayam, because we belong to Alahayam and we are his houses, so when they're speaking of taking to themselves the houses of Alahayam in possession, is speaking of slavery. All right? That's it right there. Okay, let's look at the last few verses of Psalm 83. Verse 13. O Alahai, my Alahayam, make them like a wheel as the stubble before the wind. As the fire burns a wood and as the flame sets the mountains on fire, so persecute them with your tempests and make them afraid with your storm. Fill their faces with shame that they may seek your name, O Yahweh. They're not going to come and seek him. Why would they want to come and seek him? All right? They're going to be filled with shame and anger and rage and what have you. And even if they try to seek his name, they're not going to find it. Let them be confounded and troubled forever. You see, confusion is going to come when they try to find his name. Because they're trying to get out of their predicament. But it's going to be too late because justice is going to be served. And it's going to be served hot. As you see here, he's sending a fire. Let them be confounded and troubled forever. Yea, let them be put to shame and perish. That means destined for the lake of fire. That men may know that you, whose name alone is Yahweh, are Ha'ola Yawan over all the earth. He is the highest over all the earth. The ending of this psalm, the prophetic prayer of Asaph, is calling for the destruction of the enemies of Yashraal, which we know will come at the very end of age. Alahayam is going to start with the whore of Babylon, the pagan religious system that is running this world right now. And he's going to move on to the other Satans and their agents, their earthly agents. And he's going to clean house. We have studied this in the Revelation series. We have come to understand now that Psalm 83 cannot be a war, but it was a conspiracy against the people of Alahayam called Yashraal. They conspired to try to wipe us off the face of this earth. And when that did not work, they decided to hide us from the world and to hide our identity from us. This worked for a time until now that these same people, we have been awakened to our true identity. So these same people that hid us, they want to find us now. But we have been awakened to our true identity. And now Alahayam has hidden us in plain sight from them. We're hidden from them. They hide us from ourselves. And now Alahayam has hidden us from them. These wicked people cannot discern us from the other nations who look like us. And now their once foolproof plan has backfired because they want to know who we are. But they just cannot identify us, the hidden chosen. This is a marvelous study. A marvelous, marvelous study that has opened my eyes and shown me some things that I did not see before. And I hope it did the same for you. So with that, that's the conclusion of this study. We're going to go to read the blessing for Yashraal, the Barayam chapter 6, verse 24 to 26. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 24 to 26. Yabarakak Yahweh wa Yashamarak. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. Ya'ar Yahweh panayo alayak wa yachanak. May Yahweh cause his face to shine upon you and have favor upon you. Yasha'a Yahweh panayo alayak wa yasham lak shalom. May Yahweh lift up his face upon you and give you peace. And now I will read Alahayam chapter 6, verse 4 and 5. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4 and 5. Shama'o Yashra'al Yahweh Alahayana Yahweh Achad wa Ahabath Ath Yahweh Alahayak Bakal Babak Wabakal Napashat Wabakal Ma'adak. Hear, O Yashra'al. Yahweh our Alahayam is one Yahweh, and you shall love Yahweh your Alahayam with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And with that, I will say, Shalom, Shalom. All praises to the Most High. Abba Yah.